Welcome to The Village Lantern, a podcast for families living with hidden challenges such as autism and other neurodiverse conditions, and for anyone else wanting to understand, love and support. Our mission is to build understanding, empathy and love for families living with one or more children who have hidden conditions that make life harder one way or another. We call this extra zing. When my daughter was diagnosed as on the autism spectrum, our paediatrician, I think I've said this before, she says it's just a personality type. And I thought that was really powerful. That's really stuck with me because I think that's what you're saying. It's just part of how you experience the world and how you respond to the world, which is in many ways personality. And so then it is about understanding that. And so if in the current model a diagnosis helps with that, and I know again for some people they don't want it, it's a label, there's a whole lot around it and that's very personal. But from our experience, and I think you and I share this, the more we can understand, then we can help and we can try and find that way of living as you are instead of trying to adjust. In the spirit of reconciliation, Takes a Village acknowledges the traditional custodians of country here on the lands of the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, as well as throughout Australia, and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Hi.
Hi.
How nice is this?
It's peaceful.
Do we feel like
Not
we're
because
in...
of you, Shah. Sorry, that's...
Oh, no, Shah's not here.
The peace is around children, not around beautiful Shah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, although she would love it here.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, we miss her. We have, just the two of us today. And we've got a new layout.
I know.
It's my typical ADHD, like always trying to do something different.
Yeah.
But I think this is good. And
Anna
when Shah
rearranged
comes,
the entire podcast studio while we were gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keeps me sane. Yeah. Something I can control.
Yeah, which is a good segue into what we're talking about today.
Yes, it is. It is. Today we thought we would talk about ADHD.
Yeah.
Obviously we're not experts, so there's our disclaimer. But it
lived
is
experience
lived
lens.
experience lens. And obviously there's a lot of momentum at the moment publicly about better awareness of it.
Yeah.
Lots of women getting diagnosed, in particular when their children are getting diagnosed.
Yeah.
And it's not very hard to find people talking about it if you want to go on socials.
Yeah.
And so we thought let's do a shorter chat in the absence of Shah. We don't want to miss any conversations that we'd love her to be here for.
Yeah.
But so how ADHD affects my family is I have combined type, diagnosed when my eldest son was diagnosed with inattentive type when he was 10. My daughter has ADHD along with autism, spectrum disorder, and my youngest is combined, like me.
Yeah.
And your story?
My story is my eldest was diagnosed with ADHD before autism, and
We joke sometimes that it always starts
it
with
always
ADHD.
starts with that, yeah, totally, with inattentive type, and then my middle child with hyperactivity, and my youngest was last year with combination. But just to clarify as well, the DSM-5 now doesn't actually characterise those three traits. No, but it's really helpful to understand. So maybe we can explain, first of all, what ADHD looks like when you have those different types, which may or may not be now officially what psychologists use. But
I don't
it's
know
really
that
helpful.
I don't know enough about the history of it. Like
Okay.
when our kids were diagnosed, they didn't tell us which type it was. It was just as I got to understand more about it that I could see how different it was.
Yeah. I know with my middle child, that was the only one that I knew. I could see what the type was because when the psychologist went through the process and showed me the sort of rankings against each of the criteria according to what we'd filled out, what the teachers had filled out, he only just got over that line for some sections, and other sections was under the diagnosis kind of line.
Is that right?
Yeah, those things were the inattentive types.
Right.
So that's why
because
I
they're
could
trying to
see-
test for all the things.
Yeah, so he didn't say your child has hyperactive type, but I could just see that area where we went into the red zone or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Compared to the other parts.
Yes. And
less so.
can you remember what the inattentive type questions were?
No.
So you're saying, does he have executive functioning challenges?
So great question. Why don't we step back and actually define what executive function is? Because I think that was something I didn't fully understand at the time.
Neither did I.
That was why I resisted. I didn't resist acknowledging that he had it, but probably why I wasn't pushing for it, and why the psychologist said, hang on a second, I think he's got ADHD. And I was
Because
like,
you felt like, I know what ADHD is and I can't see certain parts of it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's got great executive function, because I interpreted executive function to be just about the ability to organise.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's right. So while I struggle with it, I can, and so can my youngest. But yeah, executive, I mean, again, we're not experts, but what was your preconceived idea about what executive functioning was?
Well, my preconceived idea was that the ability to organise your life. So, and just as simply as that, like I can do that well, my middle child can do that well, so therefore neither of us have ADHD. But what I then and since have understood that it's about a goal. So that's the language that you might use, is at reaching that goal.
To be able to organise yourself towards achieving a goal. Yep.
But within that goal, it's about your ability to organise, prioritise, emotionally regulate.
Focus?
And focus.
Is that right? So you're saying that your middle child doesn't have trouble focusing
doesn't have
on
when
stuff
it's an
he
interest.
doesn't like?
So that was where the ADHD came in, because I'd say to the psychologist, oh my gosh, but he can focus on football and he can talk about this, and
hyper focus.
He can do his maths and his English assignments because he'll just choose the topic of football.
Right.
And he'd be
Genius.
like, because ADHD is an interest-based, and I don't want to use the disorder because I think that's not the correct term. It's so frustrating that it's called a disorder, I suppose, but is an interest-based issue. So if you have the interest, you have enough dopamine and enough
I think that relates to
desire.
the focus element of the, if you're saying you don't want to say focus element is a disorder, is that the bit that you don't like to say?
No, I just don't like to generally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny one because it depends how you hear the word disorder.
Yeah.
Like, does it mean, because actually maybe I'm very visual, I think it's a disordered brain function.
It's a disordered brain function.
Which in fact, in that sense, I probably would say there are some disorder, only in comparison to typical, right? But I don't see it necessarily as a negative thing. Maybe that's why it's a sensitive term for some people, because it feels like it's a negative overlay. And then, when I was in the ADHD course, which I know you're doing now, I learned a lot because I come in, and I'm older, I suppose, as well, and I've come to terms with it and I've done a lot of work to manage it. But I was saying, I think it's a gift. There's all these amazing things. And a couple of people said, I don't see it like a gift.
Yeah.
It's actually ruining my life.
Yeah.
So I'm really sensitive now to the fact that, and in that context, they would call it a disorder because it's helpful to acknowledge it as something negative because it's so detrimental to their life.
Yeah. I think I need to think about why I don't like the word disorder. It wasn't that it doesn't have negative implications. It's more, can we find better words to describe what? Well, that's, like same with ASD, like that's awful.
The diversity,
syndrome
isn't right?
Spectrum.
Yeah, I know.
It's just, so how do we find something that, well, I think I like the word I am autistic and I'm an ADHDer.
Yeah.
They're really positive identity-based ways to describe it.
Oh, my gosh. Do you know what you've just made me realize? Yesterday I listened to this amazing interview. James Valentine has this series on ABC Listen called, now I can't remember what it's called.
It's okay, ADHD.
It's about meaning. He interviews people about meaning. Well, what is meaningful to them and what do they believe? Yeah. It's about belief.
Yeah.
It's the most brilliant series. Everyone he gets on there's so much in there. But one of the guys, and of course I can't remember his name. I think it's George Miller, the filmmaker.
Yeah.
He says, and this is learned from other thinkers, he references all the thinkers where he gets his ideas from, that he says he sees being alive as a verb, not a noun, which is sort of like what you're just saying. So instead of I have ADHD, I am autistic, or I am an ADHD, because it defines how you are, not what you are.
Yeah, I don't like the idea that something's put upon us, like I have it or I've...
Also, you can't get rid of it, right?
You can't get rid of it. It's like it's part of your identity. So I suppose that's the difference. And it's the community uses many different languages. None of that is right or wrong, but I like the identity-based, strength-based
and
definitions.
that's your preference for how you want to talk about it.
And so it's like, I'm autistic and I was identified as autistic at this time.
Yes.
Not I was diagnosed or I was told I had it. It was like at that point was when I understood.
Identified.
I identified my ADHD.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really powerful for our, the community to say that, because you're it's just a strength-based way
of... It's a revelation.
Yeah.
Well, when I know we're jumping a bit all over the place, but when my daughter was diagnosed as on the autism spectrum, our paediatrician, I think I've said this before, she says it's just a personality type. And I thought that was really powerful. That's really stuck with me, because I think that's what you're saying. It's just part of how you experience the world and how you respond to the world, which is in many ways personality.
Yeah.
And so then it is about understanding that. And so if in the current model a diagnosis helps with that, and I know, again, for some people they don't want it, it's a label, there's a whole lot around it, and that's very personal. But from our experience, and I think you and I share this, the more we can understand, then we can help, and we can try and find that way of living as you are instead of trying to adjust.
And that's the difference between like that neuroaffirming. So it's your identity, or it's your personality, or however you want to describe it. It's not a disorder that you need to cure and fix, because it's you.
Well, you can't.
You can't. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So therefore, changing the language around that changes the idea. Well, it's me. So how can we work out accommodations if I need them, or just to affirm that this is who I am and this is how it presents itself.
Yeah. So let's go back, because you're good at structure and I'm not, about you wanted to quickly talk about the different types.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm no expert, so this is all related to us. So that was really the only way that I could see that he was different to the other two.
Yes. Because did you say, but I thought you said number 1 was inattentive.
Yeah.
And number 2 is hyperactive.
Yeah.
And number 3 is combination.
Yeah. So they all present differently.
Yes.
So number 3, my third child, is like textbook.
Yeah, like
now,
me.
Yeah,
right?
Textbook.
Yeah.
Now that I have a textbook and I'm studying ADHD, I understand.
Yeah.
So the impulsivity is really a massive challenge, and that's when the Ritalin helps. So that's what's incredible about that when you're so impulsive, that's what that does. It doesn't solve it, but it just stops those urges.
Yeah.
And I think there's something that I learned as well, that stimulant medication, this is a good comeback for people who might not want to give their children this, but that stimulant medication is actually a protector against substance abuse.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Rather than that argument that maybe quite religious people or people who are against medication would say, oh, it's just a precursor, like you're just giving them, you're going to get addicted to this. It's like, no, because it's stopping the impulsivity. And for most people it does, not everyone.
Yeah.
It can really help
Yes.
with then potential for addiction, which is a massive problem, as we know.
Massive.
Yeah.
And I think there are cases of abuse. People
Of
who, you know what I
course.
mean? So people who use it and it's the right thing for them, but actually they take it too far. So I think that's the other reason that, it's a bit, there's concern around it. And even for some people that I've met along the way who their doctors prefer not to prescribe a stimulant because they have a previous history of drug abuse, even though they, because they were self-medicating, right? Or eating disorders.
There is definitely strict rules around, not rules, but like psychiatrists and doctors don't want to give that stimulant if there's other things going on for you, and they'll try other methods. Yeah,
because we're all complex humans. And whether we all share a diagnosis of ADHD, but we also have a past and a history and a pattern and a tendency, which, it can play out differently.
Yeah.
So you said, for your youngest with combined, the Ritalins really help with the impulsivity?
It's been amazing. And I think we have this family kind of joke where maybe a couple of years ago we were all talking about neurodiversity, neurodivergent members of our family, and the littlest one was like, but I don't have that. And we were like, oh, you're not.
Before they were diagnosed.
And they bring that up all the time, saying, Mum, remember that time when you didn't think I was neurodivergent? And what I have since realised, and I've spoken to you about this, Anna, is that they had quite severe anxiety, separation anxiety, and anxiety around particular things, freeways and sleep and everything.
That's like my third,
Yeah, and once we got that under control, thank God for therapy and medication for that, I always say, then your true self came out.
Yes.
And your true self is this beautiful person with all of this impulsivity.
And I'm really tired.
Yeah, and you know, all of the things that you are.
Yes.
That was being held back by that anxiety.
Yes.
And so we didn't see that, like from when you were really little.
Yeah.
You were obviously really anxious, and now that we've got that under control, this is you, and that's great, and let's work out how to help you be the best you can be with ADHD.
Yeah.
But that's why we didn't see it.
Yeah, my third has always had those issues. Remember when we were at your family's place once and you guys, I was so consumed with the middle one who was more demanding, or more had higher need earlier. And the little guy was like, a little boy calling out to me, desperate. And I was like, hang on. And you guys were like, Anne? And I was like, I hadn't even thought of it.
I think he's really anxious.
So anxious and always has been.
Yeah.
But you know what I think about, and he's combined type, turns out. So one of the other things that my amazing psychologist often talks about, I think it's her. Oh my gosh, there's so many people I talk to.
Could be a podcast or your therapist.
All the different amazing
the same thing.
That it's not attention deficit, it's attention overload.
Yeah.
It's actually, there's too many things that you're paying attention to. It's not that you can't, it's that you can't discern which ones to cut out. And I think in that instance when you're fearful of things, it's because you're seeing it all. You know, my little guy used to be really fearful going into the local shopping mall because it had one of these glass roofs that looked like a wave or something. And he just looked up and said, well, why is that not going to fall down?
Yeah.
And if you were completely inattentive and not noticing anything, you wouldn't have those issues.
Yeah. And I think that's the best, that's the positive thing we have to harness with people with combination. If they can move through that being awful and anxious and whatever, that's almost your career path, is noticing that you can notice all these incredible things other people can't.
Yeah.
Whether it's patterns, whether it's, you know, in a room, whether it's visual. Like I see that with my littlest, notices everything.
Yeah, and you see the big picture,
boom, boom, boom.
right? Because you see it all. And I don't know if this, of course, nothing applies to everyone, but I think one of the things I've started to notice about people who have combined type is that they're very good at seeing the big picture. And actually, when you think about how to teach them, for example, children, or if you want to teach something new, you have to tell the big picture first, where the thing that you're learning fits in.
Yeah.
Because it has to make sense. And there's so much benefit to thinking like that. I've noticed a lot of adults who have combined type end up in entrepreneur roles.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
yeah.
or leadership roles, hospitality,
well. running your own business,
holding it all there.
Yeah.
And the more stress and the more pressure, the more you thrive.
Yeah, emergency doctor.
Yes,
like emergency nurse,
doctor,
ambos.
Anything where there's a crisis. And I know I still notice that now. I am absolutely at my best in a crisis.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I have them all the time.
Yeah. So, and do you know why? Because I started focusing on this week with the study that I'm doing, and I also heard Osher Gunsberg on the Imperfects.
Oh, I haven't listened yet. Yeah.
And he talked about how we're, in like live TV is the perfect for an ADHDer, because you've got all these messages in your ear around stand here, do this, welcome this person, introduce whatever. And he said, and I just feel really calm.
Yeah.
So
and really alive.
Really alive. You know? And what that's about is I figured it out with the help of other ADHDers and this course, is that you have so much stimulation happening, you don't need to seek it anymore.
Yes.
So you are...
That's why you feel so alive and connected.
And you're so calm.
Yes.
And also you're not a future-thinking person with ADHD usually. So you're in the moment, you're calm, you've got all the stimulation, you're not seeking it.
Yeah.
And you can just problem solve, which is what you're good at.
Yep. And it's right now.
It's right now.
So, you know, if I think about what I love about being in that moment is, it's too late for any study that I haven't done or any prep that I haven't done. I'm here now.
Yeah.
And that, because I used to carry around, I still do, all this kind of anxiety about what I haven't done enough of in order to be prepared for something. But when you're there and in it, too late, here I am. And that's really freeing, you know?
Really freeing. And I think as parents, that's what we have to keep focusing on when our kids with ADHD are struggling, or we're finding it a struggle to parent them, is all of those positive qualities, because it's not all positive, obviously, and it's super hard and really frustrating at times for them to live in that brain. But he's like, okay, well, this is what this means for you. You're so good in that situation. How can I turn this negative, difficult thing that you're finding hard at school or at home, how can we harness what you're good at and focus on that part?
Yeah, and how do we help you recognise those so you can seek them as well, you know? One thing I'm interested, given you've got experience with the 3 types, do you see consistently rejection sensitivity dysphoria?
Oh my God, just for the combination.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, actually, sorry. I would have thought up until recently that it was just the youngest, because the youngest can't, like, the rejection sensitivity dysphoria is so full on that it goes to other people. So we can't, like, if we see a homeless person up ahead, we have to either give them money or walk away because the pain is so great. If there's a shop front that has just closed down, it just breaks their heart, you know, and same with friends and everything. But I have noticed it actually with my middle one recently because it's more around sporting things. So it's like, okay, well, that sensitivity around didn't get picked for something or whatever, then it's just, it's
like painful.
Painful.
I see it in all my kids. And I definitely understand it about myself now. You know, there's a few family stories that everyone tells. I don't remember many of them because I don't remember anything, but there was one about me when I was about 10 when we were overseas, and there was a man selling matchsticks on the corner, and apparently I was just devastated about that. And my parents were like, oh, that's a sensitive little child. Yeah, that's kind, sort of whatever. But that is such a stark example for me of what I feel so often. And even in this life, and I don't wish I didn't think like this, but it can be really painful. And you do have to find ways to protect yourself, you know, because otherwise you just get burnt out. But even in the experience that we've been having with our middle child where things are really, really rough, what is happening for me in parallel is I think about all the other families that have a similar situation to us that don't have the privileges that we have. And so in the moment of me having trauma with my child, I'm also like having these parallel traumas. Oh, the families who don't speak English or, you know, don't know how to, you know, deal with it or haven't got the financial means to do with certain things. So it's kind of like this, it's like
double trauma, but I thought that would make you feel better. But
no.
Like, not better, but like, look, at least we've got.
Oh, it does. I do. There's absolute
at least
gratitude.
we can pay for this or we have support.
Absolutely in that sense. There. And I think maybe that is the other side of that tendency is if you can shift it to build a practice of gratitude, you can't go wrong if you have a practice of gratitude in your life, no matter who you are. So I think I love what you're talking about. The more that we understand how our children are, we teach them how they are, and we can find those flip side strategies that build these amazing traits for them.
Like yesterday, we've all been sick, so everyone was home yesterday, and the Red Cross knocked on the door, and my youngest child was chatting. He's like, Mum, you got to come. And I'm like coughing and hello and whatever. And he's like, hi, it's great to see you. And he does the big spiel. And I was just like, I feel awful, but it's not the time for us to be signing up. You know,
because they make you sign. It's not like here's $10.
So he did this full spiel. He was so articulate. It was really great. And he was talking about domestic violence in front of an 11-year-old. But anyway, it was really great what he was doing and where the money was going and whatever. My 11-year-old turned around and looked at me with this face like beaming, just like,
because you signed up.
No, we're going to do. So we're going to do this now.
Oh no!
Mum. And I was like, oh, thank you so much, but we already donate to a couple of organisations, and I can't see us fitting in another one at the moment. Shut the door, and the look and the reaction that I got from my youngest child was like, you are a beast, you are awful, and slammed the door and walked off. And then once they'd come, I know, because they were just like hearing all this thing and then thinking this is an opportunity we can give. And then when things had calmed down, I said to them, and I had to show them, here are the things that we donate to. Here are the organisations we donate to, and these are the causes that I feel really passionate about. If you would like us to have a conversation with the family and change those to the Red Cross, I'm happy to have that conversation, but at the moment this is what Dad and I have chosen. That helped a little bit, but in that moment, that for me to reject that person when they had like poured their heart out was their job, but about something was just devastating.
You know what I think that is as well, and this is something I'm still working on, but I'm getting better, is that because what that child wanted to do was to do something, because we jump to action. If we have really strong feelings, we jump to action. Because that's action and movement for us is, whether it's physical movement or a task or an activity, that resolves that pain. And that sometimes you can act, and that's amazing. Sometimes you can act too fast.
And I just put a lid on that action then. Well, no, in their mind, like, in her mind, their mind.
I mean, maybe, but that's a good thing to talk to them about, to say, I understand that.
It took a long time because I was so angry.
And even if you understand it, it still can take time. But I think the more that you understand what your default response to something is, sometimes it's the right one and sometimes it's not. And of course, if you have impulse control issues on top of that, There can be a lot of doing,
Yeah.
a lot of doing. And even my psychologist said to me the other day, because I said, I've been manically cleaning. Like I can't do anything for days. And then I get up and for 3 days, I'm like hardcore manically cleaning.
Yeah.
And
Can you come to our house?
Probably, if I got there, I could probably never get there, but if I got there, it would be amazing. But what she suggested was that part of what that is trying to feel better because of some unprocessed pain, right? And because it's avoidant and it also is distracting. And then...
So it's not about control. I had assumed it would be like a controlling your environment. Like if my house is clean, things will be okay.
There's a bit of that, but I think the compulsion and that sort of obsession, and I don't have OCD, but those terms help. I'm sure it's many things. Like I definitely feel better when things are organised because if I can see chaos and I feel it, it's too much. So if I can see order, that helps.
Yeah.
But
But getting that, having enough interest, is it what the ADHD thing is, the interest to
the
actually
motivation to do it and then to stop.
Yeah.
You know, like my eldest, I was running around, I was in his room, I was cleaning up because his room's a sty because he's a teenager and he has ADHD. And he goes, Mum, just stop. And I said, I can't. And I can't remember if it was before or after that I spoke to my psychologist about that. And she said, building in some time to process the sad things might help with that because, what happens is you're sort of broken and exhausted. You can't do anything for days. And that is partly ADHD, but also if things are really hard, then you are a bit flat. Then you get started and it becomes this sort of, it's too much of a pendulum swing. And then you're tired again, and then I wake up and my back hurts, because I've been like cleaning or doing something for a long time. And the idea of actually sitting
in
and
the shit,
allowing some of it
hurts.
It hurts, but you gotta.
I know.
And that's why I like to still go to my psychologist. I'm in a mostly a pretty good place, I think, but I like to go somewhere where I can sort of be held still to process.
Yeah.
And I don't like to talk about things too much because not only because I'm a bit sick of talking about things. It's been a long time of talking about hard things, but also depending on who I'm talking to, then I also, because I'm highly empathic, if they have a shocked or sad reaction, then I have to carry that too.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't have any space to make you feel better about what's hard for me. That's my thing. But also some of it's just really big.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't really know. And now I'm talking myself out of it and overcomplicating it. But what I think she was encouraging me to do is try and build in some of those moments where you just stop. And sometimes you might feel fine or relaxed, but if there are some really sad, deep things in there, just sort of letting them come up. And sometimes that's why I like watching.
But you have to be strong enough to do that, don't you think? And obviously he or she thinks that you are, because if you stop and it all comes up, what happens if you can't deal with it?
Yeah. Well, I think
you fall in a heap or you don't leave the house.
Yeah. Well, I can also fall in a heap by ignoring it.
True.
I mean,
I think it's good advice, but you've got to have something so that you don't fall through the floor.
Right. And it's another disclaimer for anyone who's listening, any of those times when you have to face into hard stuff, you want to do it with the right kind of support and help and advice about whether it's the right time.
Yeah.
But I think because this has been so long now and the hard things have changed, but they're not getting easier, they're just changing. I think that I need to have an ongoing practice of being able to grieve and process.
That's more sustainable for you.
Yeah, that's more sustainable. And also, I'm not a psychologist by any means, but, we've heard enough about how if you're carrying a lot of stuff and you don't process it, it comes out some way. And if you know there's going to be more, it's sort of like going to the gym or it's like a self-management kind of mechanism.
Yeah, yeah.
Having said that, I've just been like manic all morning, but...
No, but it's a lot sort of managing all this and then with your own neurodivergent brain.
Yes.
I think that's, and what I've been really interested in lately is the generational impact of ADHD because you have it, and I don't mean generational as in it's passed down, but you have it so you, fingers crossed, have a lot of awareness and understanding and empathy for your kids who have it.
Yes.
But for a lot of parents who don't understand it or they're not diagnosed, there can be a lot of shame and anger towards their children for the way that they're doing things. And that has a massive impact for kids in their neural pathways as they're developing, and they get negative told off, shame. By the time you get to a late teen, then you've got addiction and all these other things coming up because you're like, well, I just need to numb that cognitive hyperactivity, or I need to numb those feelings that I'm useless because I was told that growing up the whole time.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that what you just said about the parents potentially not coping with it, you know how if you see a trait in your child that you don't like about yourself, you can be really cross about it.
Really cross.
Really
irrationally cross.
And that's for all parenting.
Yeah.
But in this context, it's, I mean, I think anything that, any sort of negative feedback that a kid's getting, especially from their parents, is going to be damaging. But in that sense, it does take a look in the mirror and to ask yourself, why am I annoyed about that particular thing? Because that's personal. There's something about me in that. Yeah. And how do I resolve that so that I'm not passing that down?
Yeah, because you were probably, not you, Anna, but as the parent, you were told you were shit and useless and disorganised or whatever as a child, potentially if you're undiagnosed ADHD, and you're then
you think that's how you parent, right? Because that's how you were parented.
But it is so common, the amount of people, friends of friends that have reached out to me that are like, you know, my child has got ADHD and I don't know what to do because I find them, it's just excruciating. Like, how do I manage this? What do I do with this?
Yeah.
And I feel like without going into that deep dive around what it is and that it's not their fault, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And
I think I said in the interview with my beloved Chris Varney, I split it into two, but I said to him, because he said to me that he was working on this issue of he had a hang-up that he was working on. And I said, I've got one about being annoying, like a deep fear of being annoying, because I was a hyperactive kid who probably was annoying. And also I had a sister who was not much older than me, so my parents had 2 toddlers. But I have somehow, through, just absorbing, and when you're really sensitive to what other people think, I'm really sensitive to being annoying.
Yeah. I talk to my kids about being annoying all the time because I want to take it back. I want to take that word back.
Yeah.
Because I know exactly what you're saying. I felt like that as a child.
Did you?
Well. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Fourth child, though.
And I talked a lot.
Yeah.
Interrupted people all the time. I still do.
Really?
But I talk to my kids. I'm like, people in life who are not neurodivergent or who are not extroverted will find you annoying.
Yeah.
Other people will not. They will love you. They will embrace your enthusiasm and your extroversion and your ability to problem solve and all these other positive things. And you will find those people, but the other ones,
I'm not sure if it's, I mean, I don't know that this is what you said, but what I heard was you said if they're not neurodivergent, they will find you annoying. Some of them, because some people love it.
Yeah.
Some people love someone who talks a lot because then they don't have to talk, finding that mix. But I think also, I said this to one of my children and someone observed to me that it was probably a bit much to try and present to a child, but I think it was my 15-year-old. I said, if someone is the children were complaining that one of them was being annoying to the other, and I was trying to describe that if you're annoyed, it's your problem, not the other person. Oh, it's my daughter saying, so-and-so's being annoying and it's their fault and therefore I'm cracking it. And because it's really hard for her to separate herself from, and I've had to learn this the hard way because I have so many irritations and frustrations. Everything would annoy me, sounds, things. And now I know that's my problem. If there's a scenario that I'm getting really triggered and annoyed, I have to take myself out of it. I can't crack it at the person who's annoying me. And that's a really helpful kind of, on a few levels, because then you start to see that it's something that you're experiencing that's within you. Now, easier said than done to do something about it, but not to externalise it that all these people around me are annoying. And so I guess what I'm saying is if there are people in the world who find your kids annoying, that's their problem.
I suppose, there's two elements to what we're both saying. It's that I was trying to explain to them that whether it's a personality thing as well, there are people in life who there's personality clashes. So remove the neurodivergent part. But I suppose I added that in because often with ADHD you are hyperactive and you do talk a lot and you interrupt people. So there's going to be, and there are for all of them, people in their class that find them excruciating. Yeah.
And if it's your boss, that's a problem.
That's a problem. But I didn't want them to have shame around that.
Totally.
And just say that if you find friends and a profession where that is celebrated, then that's the best. That's amazing.
And that's back to that whole issue that we've talked about a lot. School is hell.
It's awful.
Because you can't control that. Once you're out, you can choose your environment, choose your friends, choose your environment, choose who you're around. You can't do that at school. So that's right. You know, it's helping them understand the reality of it, but understanding that there will be a time when you have more control over that, and that's a much better time.
And school, it's just super duper challenging for kids when they can't see what the future will look like, and it's not always going to be like it is at school.
Right. And even it's easy for us to say, well, after year 12, but for them, that's a lifetime. You know, we can see it obviously in the scheme of more time, but it's really hard.
Speaking of time.
Yes.
Is there anything else? And we could talk about this forever, really.
I think there's plenty, but what you just said about shame, shame, have you come up with that in the course yet? Yeah. So shame is a massive one.
Yeah.
And because shame comes from the belief that there's something wrong with you. And I have grappled with shame my whole life, not knowing that that's what it was.
Yeah.
And as I've come to understand my wiring and maturity, and also just doing a lot of work on self-compassion, I can see now, but it is really the kind of patterns that absolutely can come about. And it's partly from how people respond to you, but it's also about your rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And it's also about that you think, why can't I do things that other people can do? So there's a whole lot of elements that lead to shame if the child thinks that they're faulty. So to your point about the term disorder, in that sense, that's really unhelpful because I remember for years, for all of my childhood, well, I was in my 40s when I got diagnosed, I just always felt like there was something wrong with me. And now I know that it's not wrong, it's just different. But if your kids are diagnosed early and you can talk to them early, you can really change that track of developing deep shame patterns.
Yeah, which is exactly, I was just looking at my notes from the course that I brought with me because I was so excited to talk about ADHD, but there's a very specific, obviously your neural pathways and, you know, thinking about the elasticity of the brain, saying that if you do get a diagnosis and therefore help with your executive function before you are an adult.
Yes.
And for ADHD is you often don't become fully developed. You become fully developed a bit later, so that might be mid-20s.
For me, I think it's 40.
Yeah. Well, I've got my notes here saying 30.
Yeah, well, late developer,
That if you get that support, you can actually improve those neural pathways.
Yes, so, and bring that earlier. I mean, not that it's a race, but you
can improve, and through positive and like either it's like rewiring them in terms of the positive framework, so you're not shame, negative, but also support around your executive function.
Yes, all of those things.
Yeah.
The earlier that you can, and I've been saying this to my youngest because he's so self-critical, and I say to him in language that I think is probably digestible for a 10-year-old, your brain is being really mean to you right now.
Yeah.
You're trying to do this thing and you're getting really frustrated because you're telling yourself you're not good at it. So just those little tips of being able to help them separate their thought from themselves.
Yes.
And also you can be embarrassed about something, which is feeling uncomfortable about a situation, but you're not blaming it on yourself.
Yeah.
And shame is that. So even if you can start to help them separate that, that's embarrassing, but it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That situation was just, so, you know, I try and help my kids separate, you know, because I often tell my daughter, if she says something nasty to me, I say, oh, that really hurt my feelings, or that wasn't very kind. And she says, you're not very kind. And I said, no, I wasn't saying you weren't. I was saying that action or those, you know, I have to say it a lot of times, but I think that even that tool for kids to be able to start to help them separate back to this idea of what you are versus what you do.
Yeah.
You know, and this amazing interview with George Miller, with James Valentine, where he said, humans are a verb, not a noun. So I'm not so for argument's sake, I'm not a mailman. I'm someone who delivers mail sometimes. So being able to see that your actions are, but they're changing all the time. They're live. They're not static. And I think there's so much that people like us who are very much in the moment, makes so much sense to me. I'm like, of course I'm a verb. How could I not be anything else? I'm always doing. But it helps you separate that identity thing. So much more to say.
So much. I know. So much. I wanted to talk about time blindness. I wanted to talk about frustration, boredom, but we'll save that for another time.
Let's do another one. Let's do little ADHD, vox pop things.
And let us know if you found this helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
So good, Anne. Bye.